مرحبا، أنا رامز الأخ ياسر، نحن من سوريا نقيم في لبنان تابعين لكنيسة الصور.
In the background we have the Triumphal Arch of Hadrian.
First came to Lebanon 5 years ago. The refugees hadn't started arriving from Syria yet. It wasn't long after we got here that they started coming in increasing numbers of people. The ones who came without anything. They were fleeing cities like Aleppo and Hama and Homs, even Damascus. And when they came here, they came with just what they could bring. They would just grab a few things and flee in the middle of the night sometimes. And so they arrived here with nothing, and they needed everything. We helped them with food portions, with milk for their babies, with diapers, with medical needs, all sorts of things that they needed. And it really expanded from there. If you want to understand the situation of the refugees, they need you to understand the reasons behind the war that they're fleeing in Syria. In Syria, there are four main groups who are involved in the war. There's the government group, which is a Shiite Muslim group, and it's allied with other Shiite Muslim groups. There are the Sunni Muslim rebels. There's the Islamic State, who are also Sunni extremists, and there are the Kurds, who are more of an ethnic group. These four groups are fighting for control of different areas of Syria. If you want to understand the war as a political war, it's really not. The war is really a religious war that dates back about 1,400 years to the Battle of Karbala, which happened in Iraq, between a group which would later become the Sunnis and a group which would later become the Shiites. And this division that began at this battle among the Muslims is behind the war today that stretches from Yemen all the way to here in Lebanon. When Syrians flee the war, their options are based on their economic class. So the wealthy Syrians have gone to places like the Gulf and Egypt and Turkey, in some cases even Europe, and they live a life there that's not much different than what they lived in Syria. The people that we get here are the middle class people. They're people who had enough money to leave the country, but are not able to live once they get here because they've expended all their resources.
Salut du sud Liban de l'église de Tyr. Bienvenue chez nous. On vous attend.
The minimum wage here in Lebanon is $600 a month, but a typical illegal worker with a good salary will make $300 a month. This is a very hard situation for the refugee families because this doesn't leave them anything to live on. When they come here, we find them usually in one of three living situations. Someone with a decent job paying $300 or more a month might live in a two-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town. Often there won't be good doors or windows. The heat comes in the summer and the cold comes in the winter. There may be problems with black mold and leaky roofs and things like that. Most of the refugees live in the second kind of housing, which is typically unfinished housing. Often there'll be a building that's under construction and not finished, and they'll live in one of the empty rooms. They don't have windows or doors in the openings, so they cover them with blankets or plastic, and they're really exposed a lot to the elements living this way. The black mold is a big problem, leaky water. These aren't really decent places to live. While a good apartment might rent for $300 or $400 a month, they can often rent one of these substandard apartments for $200 a month. It might even be built under a stairway that a landlord has taken in, or he might put up a couple of extra shacks up on the roof and rent those out for a couple of $100s a month. The poorest people live in camps. They actually get dirt that they rent. They'll often pay $100 a month or $60 a month just to rent enough space, enough dirt to build a shack on. They'll typically group in families of 20 to 30 to 40, and they live on the land that they work on. So they'll get a job with a farmer picking his crops, and he'll rent them some land to build a shack on. I'll tell you the story of Mustafa, a lady who came here with her 2 children. It's very common in Arab culture for extended families to live together in the same building. The father will build a building and he'll put enough extra rooms in it for his children to all have their own place, and the entire extended family lives together. Grandmother, grandfather, children, grandchildren. This was the case with Mustafa's family. In the middle of the night, a rocket hit their building and blew up the building. In that same attack, Mustafa lost her mother and her father and her husband and several of her brothers and sisters. There were also other children in the family who were killed in the attack. So what happened at the end is that Mustafa and her brothers and sisters moved here with the remaining children and lived together in a very poor, broken down, run down apartment where we found them and brought them to the church to help them out.
قد ايه صار لك جوعان؟ قد ايه صار لك معاكلات؟ من يومين صار لك معاكلات؟ طيب قل لي شو جاي على بالك انت؟
خبز.
شو على بالك؟
خبز.
جاي على بالك خبز؟ قد ايه صار لك ما دقتها؟
كتير.
كتير؟ طيب جوعان هلا انت؟
ما في عنا اكل، انضرب بيتنا. العالم عم يدوروا على قيمة الاكل، عم نروح
Food distribution is an important part of ministry among refugees. Many of the refugees get a very small subsistence from the United Nations, but it's not enough to feed their families. And so they end up living on rice mostly. So we try to put together packages that have better nutrients for the refugees to supplement their diet. Things like beans and cans of meat and oil that they aren't normally able to afford.
وداعا يا حبيبتي إلى اللقاء